Let's start off with that first email question of the night. This one is from Vance. I heard about a wreck where one driver had a heart attack and passed out and crashed into somebody else. If that happened because of circumstances you just couldn't control, are you just as liable as a driver who had a wreck because they were texting or speeding or something like that? Great question.
It is a great question, Vance. Unfortunately, I don't have quite enough information to give you a complete answer, and here's why. Sudden emergencies, sudden medical emergencies, they are excusable. And so that sounds strange, and it sounds actually harsh, because there are many instances where somebody does have a heart attack and or some other type of medical event, and they cause harm to someone else. If it is sudden and unexpected, then there could be a situation where there is a pass given to that party, and that way that they are not liable. However, typically what happens in a situation like that, when somebody hires a law firm and then the defense is raised that there was a sudden medical emergency, we do a little bit of digging. And sometimes it's true and sometimes it's not. More often than not, it's not true. Let me give you for instance, diabetics. Diabetics are supposed to do certain things. They're supposed to watch their blood sugar, especially somebody that's a long-standing diabetic. And let's say that they have a diabetic episode and they lose control of their faculties and they cause a crash. Well, the first thing that we do is we get the medical records from the emergency department, from the EMS, find out what statements are in there, what statements were made by the driver who was at fault. And then if that defense is raised, that opens up their medical history, and we can go take a look at their medical history and see if indeed they were following the proper procedures, protocols, taking the proper medications. In this instance that I'm referring to, as far as checking blood sugars, making sure that everything that they're doing is correct and right. And if they're doing everything correct and right, then they get the pass. If they're not doing everything correct, if they are not following their medication regimen, if they are not taking their medicines correctly, then they do not get the pass, and they are responsible just as if somebody is texting and driving.
Larry, let's take it a step further, because I think that's a really good question to kind of dive into. Let's say you are diabetic, you forget to take your medicine, or you're saying you forget to take your medicine. Is that something that you guys can easily prove that, hey, they forgot to take it? Or may it be the other way, where they're just saying they forgot to take it, and hey, well, you've been a diabetic for how long now, and you're forgetting to take your medicine?
Yeah, this is where law and medicine really, combine. And you have to dig into the medical records and you have to find that out. And so, for instance, when we get the primary medical doctor, their family doctor, and through their, not following regimen, not following diet, doesn't take medicine on a regular basis, those kinds of statements in the medical records are going to stack up against that person. I always tell people, when you've been involved in an accident, guess what? You've been testifying all of your life and you didn't realize it. Every time you go to the doctor, every time you go to the hospital, guess what? You fill out an intake form and the doctors get information from you. If somebody is saying, oh, I've never had a back injury before, but you go to the doctor and you get their primary doctor records, long-standing history of low back pain, well, that's kind of, it's like you've never had a history of back pain, but yet long-standing history of back pain. Where did the doctor get that from then, if not from you? So you have to be very careful. And we always tell people, look, when you go to the doctor, make sure that you give the proper complaints. It's okay. That's why you go to the doctor. If you don't complain to the doctor, oh, I'm fine, there's nothing wrong with me, then the doctor cannot make a correct diagnosis and help you. So you need to say, this is what's bothering me today, and make sure you go through the list of ailments so that your doctor can help you. But you have to be consistent in it as well. So what you need to do is be consistent with your medical treatment, be consistent with your medical records. And for instance, Courtney, in the situation we're talking about with a diabetic, if it goes through there, they're keeping their diabetes under control, everything is looking good, they take their medicine on a regular basis, refills are appropriate, guess what? That's going to lean more in their favor as well. So you got to be very careful, because your medical history is both a shield and a sword, and you need to make sure that you understand what is in your medical history, because you've been going to your doctors, since young people like yourself don't go to the doctors that much. You start to hit my age, and it's kind of like, okay, 3 times a year you're going to a doctor and your head's spinning, and sometimes you honestly don't remember things, but you have to kind of be aware of longstanding things that are going on. You're presumed to have knowledge of what's in your medical records.
Yeah, great advice here on Law Call tonight, and hopefully that answers your question, Lance. We have our first phone. Vance, excuse me.
Oh.
Thank you for fixing it, Larry.
Oh,
I'm looking at your name. I'm like, Lance, Vance.
There you go.
There you go.